Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. In this video, we're going to talk about zero camera filters. Recently, I was contacted by the European manufacturer of filters called Zero. They wanted me to take a look at their ND filters. Now, Zero manufactures square and rectangular filters. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the advantages and disadvantages of using a square or rectangular filter over, say, a round filter, which I think most people are familiar with. But let's talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages. Now, first of all, a round filter is super convenient. You just get one that fits your lens, screw it on, and you're good to go. The disadvantage of that is if you have a number of different lenses you want to use an ND filter on, you would probably have to buy multiple filters, one to fit each lens. Some people get around that by buying the largest filter possible, which would be usually an 82mm filter, and using a step-up ring. So if they have a lens with a smaller diameter, say 72mm, they would buy a step-up ring to go from 72 to 82 and use that same filter. The disadvantage of doing that is you usually lose the ability to use a lens hood. So it has its pros and its cons. Now, a square filter, on the other hand, what you buy is a filter holder. And this one I just picked up from K&F Concept. So you buy one filter holder, and you would buy, say, one square ND filter. In the case of this filter, it's 100mm. Then what you do is you buy just the rings you need to fit on your various lenses. So the rings are relatively cheap compared to a filter. So you buy multiple rings, one lens holder, and of course one, then in this case, 100mm square filter. And then I could use this on multiple lenses. The other advantage of a square filter is they come bigger than 100mm. Zero makes them up to 150mm. So if you have a lens that is larger than 82mm and you can't find an ND filter for it, you could buy a 150mm square filter and then use that with a lens holder that's bigger than this one. This is made for 100mm filters, but you buy a bigger lens holder and the appropriate ring, and you'll be able to use ND filters on that larger lens. So that is an advantage. Disadvantage, you can't use your OEM lens hood with these filters, although some makers of the holders have lens hoods that go on this. So you may be able to use an aftermarket lens hood in some instances if you really do need a lens hood. Now, another kind of use of these so-called square or rectangular filters is that you often want to use a graduated filter. Now, today, of course, graduated filters aren't as in vogue because you could do this in post-production. Lightroom has a graduated filter. I think just about every post-production RAW editor has some type of graduated filter in it. But if you're shooting film, film doesn't have the exposure latitude of digital, and quite often if you are shooting film, what you'll find is your sky will just be blown out. So a graduated filter comes in really handy. Now, of course, there are round filters that are graduated, but the advantage of a square, or in this case a rectangular graduated filter, is you could place it exactly where you need it. Meaning, if the horizon isn't right in the middle, you frame the shot so the horizon is down lower, you could push the filter down lower, or if it's higher, you could push it up higher. You can't do that, of course, with a round filter. So you'll have a little more versatility. Now, these graduated filters come in various styles. First of all, the graduation itself. Do you want it hard, like a hard, go from fully ND to no ND very quickly, medium, or more of a soft? I prefer more of a soft kind of graduation. Also, they have what's called a BTR filter, I'm sorry. That's this one here, and you probably can't see it in the video, but it actually isn't full ND at the top. It's graduated to full ND in the middle, then graduated to clear at the bottom. So that's a BTR filter, and a lot of people prefer those. Those sometimes look a little more natural. And they have various other types as well. In the description below this video, I'll have links to their website. You could check out everything. And as I mentioned, you could get them larger than 100 millimeters wide. Usually 100 millimeters wide will fit fine on an 82 millimeter lens and on down. If you have a bigger lens, you probably want to go with the 150 millimeter wide filters. Those will make sure that you're not getting any vignetting. And actually, that's another advantage of these filters. Often with a round filter, if you're using a very wide angle, you'll get some vignetting on the edges. With these filters, if you get one wide enough, you usually could eliminate the vignetting as well. So they come in, that is a real distinct advantage of this filter. Now, overall, using these specific filters, I found that they work great. The graduated filters I found didn't have any color shift at all. So they worked perfectly. And the full ND filter, this is a 5-stop ND filter, this was slightly cool, but I was able to correct that in post-production easily with a white balance adjustment. So it was easily corrected. Those of you that are familiar with ND filters know that often they do shift the white balance, sometimes a little cool, sometimes a little warm. These shifts, or this one at least, the full ND shifts it slightly cool. But other than that, I found they work great. They're very light, scratch resistant. They are coated to help eliminate any lens flare, anything like that. So I really enjoyed using them. Overall, I thought they work great. I used to exclusively use square filters, but I kind of got away with it in the world of digital. But I had mentioned that if you do shoot film, graduated filters are probably a must in many cases. But I should say, for digital, they are very handy as well. I recently did a video demonstrating the exposure latitude of digital cameras when shooting a high dynamic range scene. When I say high dynamic range, I mean it had a very bright sky and very dark areas down around the ground, so you have a lot of dynamic range. The camera's exposure latitude is its ability to capture those tones complete from the very brightest all the way to the darkest. And what you'll find is digitally, your camera will see into the darkness or into the darker areas much better. So it has a lot more exposure latitude into the darker areas than it does the brighter areas. So you're much more apt to blow out a sky unless you underexpose the image. When we do that, we say we're exposing for the sky. So if you expose for the sky, you'll then kind of crush the shadows in the darker areas of the image. But because the camera has better exposure latitude into the shadows, you could open those up more readily than you could rein in the highlights. So many of us do that. Unfortunately, when you do that, you introduce more noise. There tends to be more noise in the shadows, especially when you underexpose. The answer to that is use a graduated filter. Just make the sky darker so the light coming in the camera is already balanced. You could take a normal exposure, you don't have to underexpose, and you'll better control noise in the image and not blow out the sky. So in closing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you some images I recently took with these filters, and you could take a look at how they perform. I'd like to thank Zero for sending me the filters, and I'd like to thank all of you for watching my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.